Good morning and welcome back to the channel. I've got Trevor with me over my right shoulder. As you can probably tell all around us here, we're in the woods, well in the woods actually. The lighting isn't perfect, we've got a lot of direct sunlight, but there's quite a bit of cloud cover, so we're going to get the shade from the cloud. And we're going to head off in that general direction, in the direction behind you guys, and see what we can find. There's some very nice trees up here. We're in Merryworth Woods, which is between Tunbridge, Sevenoaks and Maidstone, and close to where I live, and we're going to see if we can get some nice pictures. I'm hoping so. See how it goes. So yeah, it's quite pleasant up here. Mottled. Yeah. Very extreme lighting though. Yeah, I have to do a bit of exposure blending, I guess, to make anything much if there's any sun in the shot. Apologies for the very bright colouring of myself. I'm probably scaring off all the wildlife for miles around here, brightly dressed in bright red. So, as you can see, as I slowly spin round, it's a nice piece of stand of conifers here, with the odd birch tree and a few other bits and pieces and beech trees thrown in. And I think it's particularly nice because, I don't know if you can see it, I'll spin round there. There's a series of small tracks running through, that's one, disappearing off into the distance that way. And the ground's quite uneven. There's some quite sort of 10 or 15 foot deep craters almost here, which cause the scenery to be much more varied than just having flat landscape. So I'm going to mooch around and see what else I can find. Oh, it's that madman again on the camera. I found something interesting. We're having trouble with the wind here. The wind, I don't know if you can hear it on the microphone at all, but it's quite windy, and it's moving the ferns that are all over the place around here quite a bit. Now, that isn't a major problem in itself. It's just I can't get a slow enough shutter or fast enough shutter speed sensibly to actually freeze the movement. So I've decided to go the opposite way, and what I'm going to do is I've got the camera set up here with the spin you round there. I've got the 100 to 400 and 2 times converter on, and I'm focusing on, in the distance over here, a single tree trunk that's occupying at least half to 3/4 of the frame, and around it the ferns. It's growing up through the ferns, so the lower part of the trunk's obscured by it, and I've got a 10 or a 6 stop ND on, and what I'm going to do is allow the wind to blow the ferns by having a 15 or 20-second exposure. And basically I'm at f11, which is the maximum I can get, the most open I can get this lens with that 2x converter on. So the depth of field will only be about maybe 5 or 6 inches, and I'm hoping to get something that will look quite interesting in that the tree won't be moving in that time frame. I accept it will be moving fractions of a millimetre, but compared to the ferns it won't, and at this distance the slight flurry of vagueness that will happen, the slight out of focus will happen from that, I can live with. But the ferns will be all over the place because the wind's blowing them, and I'm hoping it'll look like the tree's growing out of almost a green sea. So let's I'll switch you over to show you what the camera's looking like. Okay, so I've got the camera set up here, and you can see there's a quite nice image there. I've got a polarizer on this iPhone, which is why you're seeing this strange banding effect on the monitor here. But in terms of the image, that's quite nice. We've got this series of trees going off into the distance. The first one I'm focusing on here. You can see the focus point set on the bark on this tree, and then you've got this series of different pieces of fern which are all blowing around in the wind, as you can probably see quite a bit just while we're talking. So I'm going to take that shot. It's just gone completely out of focus. Let's let it refocus. It's a bit slow with that 6-stop on. Right, it's got that, so 2-second timer, and here we are. There we go. I think I didn't see quite how long that was going to take. 2.5 seconds, not really long enough. Let's go down to f25, which will give me a bit more depth of field, but it'll also give me, in this case, a 13-second exposure. I'm at ISO 100 because I want a long exposure, so let's do that. Oh, the sun's just gone in, that's a shame. It might come out during the 13 seconds this is taking. Yeah, I think it is just coming out again. Yes, it has done. And let's see what that image looks like. Oh, excuse the aeroplane in the distance. This is a nice bright highlighted area on the front because the sun's come out. So this is the shot that was taken, and look how the trees are nicely in focus and crisp, and all of the ferns are sort of varying shades of motion blur. I think that's not too bad an image. I'm quite pleased with that. Anyway, we're going to move around the woods a bit more. There's some large deciduous trees on the other side of this piece of conifer forest, so we'll walk the 200 or 300 yards to that and see what we can get from there. And here we have Trevor heading in this direction, hopefully with 100 shots in the bag already. How many have you taken then, Trevor?
10 so far.
10? No, I wasn't far out, a factor of 10 out. Yep. I said 100, but...
No, it's about 10 so far.
That's
really good.
It's nice, isn't it?
Surprised me, actually. That stump over there is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Lovely green moss growing up here. A lot of texture in it.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
But I love this ground. It's so uneven all over the place, and yeah, although the contrast when the sun's out is obviously very high, it's still... It adds another dimension. You've just got to be prepared to handle it with how you actually post-process and capture the necessary data.
It gives you the depth of field, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the ground undulating like this as well adds to that. So you've got all these factors coming together. I think it's quite nice.
It is.
So I'll have a mooch around and see what else I can find. Well, we've walked across the valley, Trevor and I. Trevor's just off the frame to my right, your left. And as you can see, this very fine tree here, and I appreciate the lighting conditions are far from perfect, but this is a fine old tree. I've photographed it on quite a few occasions, normally in the winter without the leaves on, but it's looking particularly fine today, so we're going to set up and we're going to see what we can get from this. What you're seeing on the iPhone is, or this video now as it is, that's a 2x zoom in. Look at the detail in those roots, it's lovely. I'll see if I can zoom right out. No, this won't let me use the ultra wide angle lens, or perhaps that is. Yeah, I think there's potential here. I'll mooch around a bit. try some different angles and see what we can get. It's going to be a high dynamic range image though, because there's a lot of light and bright and dark patches and heavy shadows, but we'll see. I'll set the camera up, so I'll find a location, composition that suits, set the camera up, and I'll talk you through getting the shot. Okay, we've walked a fair distance, well, probably about 300 yards from where we were in the conifers. In fact, I can still see them across the little track here, behind Trevor actually. There's Trevor. He's just taken a shot of this rather magnificent tree here, which you can see. Very unusual. I'll just walk you around this because it is really quite a very, thank you Trevor, a very unusual shaped tree. We've got this huge branch coming out in this direction. We've got a lot of contrast in the sense that there's bright sunlight and mottling happening, but isn't that quite an amazing tree? In fact, I'm going to make the most of it, just use this little phone to take that picture as it is there now. So although you can see my ugly mug, I press that button and it's taken me that photograph exactly as you're seeing it on the video. When I said click, and that's the image, which you'll see in the video in a few moments. And as part of that little exercise, I just want to sort of say it's really handy. I'm videoing forwards, I'm videoing myself as well at the same time from the iPhone, and I'm also able to take images whilst I'm taking the video. I don't have to stop the video, I'm actually taking it as we go. So I'm going to move around this tree a little bit further. Just excuse me sort of looking a bit vague because I've got trees and branches and all sorts all over the ground here. I'm trying not to trip up and kill myself. And I'm coming down a bit further into the woods to try and get it from a slightly different angle. And there's Trevor in the corner of the frame there. Let's just see, to go a bit further back. I've got the ultra-wide lens on the camera at the moment, but let's set the exposure point to include the sky. Move this little tree that's on the left there out of the way, and let's see if we can get that. Yeah, that's a nice shot. I'll have that. And click. I'll say click so that you know that that picture is the one in the video. And Trevor's vlogging himself and the tree as well over there. Yeah, we've got about 300 yards up the track that Trevor's standing on in the direction behind him to go, and there are a few larger deciduous trees in a small clearing there, which even with these extreme lighting conditions, I think we might get something quite nice there as well. So that's what we're going to do. We've been taking all sorts of different shots as well as the ones that go with this video. We'll put them up at the end. Hopefully you'll see and get a feel for the fact we're having an absolutely excellent time in the woods. Yes, it would be nice if there was some fog. It would be nice if the wind wasn't blowing and disturbing all the branches, and it would be nice if the light was much lower first thing in the morning or last thing at night, but it isn't, and we're making the most of the middle of the day. Otherwise we'd be sitting at home watching daytime television or post-processing unnecessarily hundreds of thousands of images on our computers. So we're out enjoying it. So we'll speak to you in a moment when we get to the next location. Trevor and I are suffering at the same time with DJI's Gimbals not quite doing what we want them to do. It's fine on the Mimo app, but we're not using that. I'm using Procam because I can do recording forward, picture in picture, both forward facing and rear facing at the same time, which is what I'm doing. And it doesn't sync to the actual gimbal itself, which is a bit of a shame, because it would be nice to be able to use the controls on the gimbal properly, but I can't zoom in or out with this application. It's about time they fixed it so it would work, because DJI's gimbals are probably the most popular on the planet, and it's not as if they're a small company. They probably can afford to do the software development necessary to make this problem go away. So I hope they do soon, because what isn't quite a perfect system would be an absolute spot-on perfect vlogging system for me as well, if it was waterproof, which it isn't. Luckily it's not raining. Anyway, I'll set the camera up and we'll see what we get. Well, I'm going to talk you through my thought processes here because, yes, we've got very extreme lighting, so reducing the amount of sky in the image, and the sun is virtually, well, it's just after 12:30, 1 o'clock, so it's pretty high in the sky. So we've got a massive dynamic range here, as you can see from this from the video as I move around. And I think there's potential here. I've shot this. I always tend to come down to this end to catch the tree, but my problem here today is that we've got this branch coming, well, all the branches have got leaves on, but normally when there's no leaves on, this branch isn't so much of a problem. But today it is proving to be a bit of a problem. So I'm thinking I might need to get down a lot lower and try that from down here. So I'm going to bring the camera over, set the tripod up, and see if I can get low enough without hurting my knee too much to actually get this shot. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the sun. I think I might have to position the camera so that the sun is directly behind one of the larger boughs higher up in the tree, because it really is shining right through. Or I could just put a sunburst effect on and let go down to f18, f22 and actually deliberately incorporate it into the image. As you can see, there he is. Right up there is the sun, and it's poking through and causing me grief. So I'll get the camera set up and see if I can get a shot from here and then talk you through it. Okay, I've got the tripod set up here, quite low. It's probably about 24 inches off the ground, something like that. And I've framed up the image as per there, which is very dark because I've set the exposure compensation to actually expose for the sky, because I've got such a high dynamic range going on with this shot. That I'll take that one and I will now focus stack, or at least not focus stack until later. Let me pull the shadows back. So I'll now focus on the tree trunk itself and take this shot. So the tree trunk's in focus, and I'm going to pull the focus point right down here to the foreground, focus on that, and those two shots will give me my focus stacking, and the first shot, the dark one, will give me my high dynamic range image, so that I can blend, focus stack and then blend the darker and the lighter images together. That way I should get something moderately reasonable. Hang on, the iPhone's complaining about no mobile data access, so I'll have to just put up with that for the moment. And it's quite a nice framing. Basically, that is the image on the iPhone that I'm trying to get. Obviously, I'm in portrait mode on the camera because the main image is this part coming through and down into the foreground. I could, I suspect, do a horizontal image pulling this set of roots leading up to the tree, onto the tree and up, much along the lines of a framing, sort of a little bit like, I'll use the iPhone to demonstrate it, something a little bit like that might work. I'm not sure if it will. Let's just try. Let's just take that shot with the iPhone and see what it looks like. Click again, that's me clicking. I've got Trevor with me, as I mentioned earlier. This is Trevor Fentiman. He's a friend of mine. He lives about 30 miles away over at Faversham. Trevor, you haven't ever been here to Merrywood Woods before, have you?
Never been. It's really worth making the effort, especially when you get someone like you to take you round. No, seriously, there's little spots here. You know, you travel through a wood and you think, maybe we'll have half an hour there. Well, we've been out now 2.5 hours. I think we're about halfway. So yeah. It just goes to show the local knowledge that Clive brought into this has paid off dividends. So there you go. Anyone want a day out with Clive, get in touch with him. You'll be surprised what he knows.
Yeah, well, it's rapidly disappearing as I get older, so you'll have to be quick on that one. Anyway, let's get on with taking some shots, should we?
Yeah, good idea.